First story. A man stands up for man's best friend. Neighbor was pissed. He stormed over to my house swearing and threatening me. Second story. A toxic man in sheep's clothing. I paid her a very modest settlement, kept the house, got custody of the 3 teenage kids, plus got child support. Third story. A criminal with many coincidences. I got a call around 1 a.m. from my brother who told me he left the keys in the Jeep and it was stolen. We request to not to skip video because no one like half stories. They are always fun if you read it to the end, before we start our story. If you are new on our channel, then click on subscribe button and click on bell icon and click on all for all notification and updates from our channel.
Revenge story. A man stands up for man's best friend. About 6 or 7 months ago, my neighbor got a drone. I don't mind people having hobbies, but for some reason he insisted on flying like the biggest jerk possible. He would hover in front of other houses and windows, try to race cars going down the road, and worst of all, he had a habit of flying his drone in my fenced backyard, buzzing over my dog, diving low just over my dog's head before circling around to do it again. My dog isn't small, he's about 70 pounds and a Malamute, but the drone terrified him, and I was worried what would happen if it hit him. I asked my neighbor several times to please not fly in my yard and explained that it was scaring my dog. He basically told me to get lost and laughed in my face. When it still continued, I called the police. Unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do other than ask him to please not fly over my house, property. What kind of neighbor does that? Finally, in late December, it happened. My dog managed to catch the drone right as it was diving towards him. He shredded the drone. The thing was just a jumbled mess of wires and plastic. Neighbor was pissed. He stormed over to my house swearing and threatening me, which I ignored. A week later, I got a summons to small claims court. He wanted $900 for the cost of his drone and an additional $300 for supposedly denying him access to his property. The drone sat in my yard for a couple hours before it was retrieved. Ah yes, the legal system will vindicate me, this jerk said to himself, probably. Turns out, him suing me was the best thing to ever happen. When we got to small claims court, the judge basically laughed away his claims that I had intentionally trained my dog to attack his drone. But little did he know I was prepared. I had dozens of photos of my yard showing it was impossible for him to accidentally fly that low to my dog, videos of him harassing my dog in the past, and I had saved all my medical bills from taking my dog to the vet. $700 for an X-ray? Check. Another $250 to sedate him during? Why not? Don't want him being uncomfortable. Full dental exam with tooth cleaning, repair? $400. Then there was the cost of anti-anxiety meds and a secondary checkup, wet food for a week in case his teeth were hurt, and extra just for good measure. In the end, this jerk ended up owing me almost $2,000. And is now being investigated by the FAA for not having a registered drone and violating several FAA regulations concerning drone flight near an airport and close to other people. Enjoy never being allowed to fly drones again, jerk.
Revenge story. A toxic man in sheep's clothing. When I got divorced, my alcoholic wife of 18 years had started another affair, this time with her addictions counselor, my lawyer, and I laid a trap for them. Just in case you don't know, intimate relations between a counselor and patient are very frowned upon by the regulatory bodies. And I was more than pissed after putting her through rehab, $25,000 which I didn't have to do, only to have her fall back into her old behavior. That's not how counselors are supposed to behave. Shortly before the divorce was finalized, I filed a complaint with the state body licensing health professions. Knowing they were in some peril because of their unprofessional relationship, I had already gotten him fired from a major teaching hospital. She backed off her exorbitant demands. I paid her a very modest settlement, kept the house, got custody of the 3 tween-age kids, plus got child support. Her lawyer included a clause in the divorce where I had to agree to not say anything negative about her lover and the relationship. But the lawyer messed up and never asked if I had already filed charges, and thus didn't require me to rescind them. Her lawyer had assumed I was just bad-mouthing them to neighbors and friends, and it never occurred to the lawyer that we were doing much more. Yo lawyers. Always double-check for prior complaints. When the Board of Health Professions responded to my complaint shortly after the divorce was finalized, I told them that it would take a subpoena to get me to testify. A subpoena trumps an agreement in a divorce settlement. They were happy to oblige. They stripped his license and placed him on a register of sanctioned health professionals. He never worked again. They were broke in a handful of years and she divorced him when the money ran out. In the interim his mother had died, leaving a fair-sized estate, so it took longer than I expected. Oh, and the frosting on the cake was that his wife and I traded notes, notably hotel receipts from the time of their affair, that helped each of us in our respective divorces. Justice was served.
Revenge story: a criminal and a coincidence. My first car was a 1984 Jeep CJ7, a pretty sweet ride for a dirt poor teenager in the 90s. I was working midnights at a gas station and loaned it to my brother who was taking a date to a party. I got a call around 1 a.m. from my brother who told me he left the keys in the Jeep and it was stolen. If you love something, let it go, and if it loves you too, it will return. I was still on the phone with my brother when the thieves pulled my Jeep into my gas station to fill up on gas. As luck would have it, the gas gauge on my Jeep was broken and always read empty, and I worked at the only 24-hour gas stations in the area. I pressed the silent alarm and proceeded to fill up my Jeep. It was a full-serve station. When the thieves were out of the Jeep, I saw an opportunity to slip the key out of this ignition and into my pocket. They paid for the gas, and argued among each other who had the keys last. The delay was enough for the police to arrive. "Ooh, you in trouble now." I had to explain the story to the officer half a dozen times before he understood. The thieves had a stunned look of disbelief on their faces I'll never forget. The cops were barely laughing telling the story to dispatch, all the while the thieves sat in cuffs in the back of the squad car.
If you like our video, please like, share and subscribe our channel. And write and comment how was the video, or if you have any suggestion. Thank you for watching.